Now, lockdown might mean school children have a lot of work to catch up on over the next few months, but new research suggests they might be paying a lot more attention in science lessons. Research commissioned by aerospace manufacturing firm Thales found children are more likely to say they want to be a doctor, nurse, or an astronaut due to the pandemic and the NASA Mars landing. Well, I'm pleased to say that one person who's on a mission to encourage children into STEM subjects is Britain's first astronaut, Helen Sharman, who joins me now. Good morning. We're all starstruck that you're joining us. It's such a pleasure to speak to you. Well, as I was saying, with the research, the pandemic has inspired over a third of children to become scientists. So it looks like you're pushing against an open door. But tell us why you're keen to get more children involved in the STEM subjects.
Yes, it's a very strange situation. I would never have imagined that I would be saying thanks to the coronavirus for anything. But Thales Alenia Space has commissioned some research which really does appear to show that parents are saying that the pandemic has encouraged many more of them to consider careers in medicine, so doctors, nurses, and being astronauts. So, as far as I'm concerned, that's a really great result. Um, Children, I think, are really seeing that science is part of everyday life, that they can make a positive impact. Now, perhaps it's partly the pandemic. We've also, of course, had these wonderful missions to the red planets, to Mars this year, three of them, and those great images we've seen from the Perseverance rover. So perhaps that's had a little to do with it. But nonetheless, it's just great that children are interested in careers in science.
Do you remember what sparked your interest? I'm presuming there was an interest as a child in science. What was it that made you think that this was your arena? You were, really gripped by it.
I was a bit odd, I suppose, as a child. I just enjoyed finding out about stuff. I was just curious about how things behave, what makes that the way it is, why is it that colour, for instance. And so for me, science was always just an interesting thing. I know not all children find that so. We're often the curiosity somehow is bashed out of us, perhaps in certain aspects of life, and life gets a bit too serious at times. I never thought about going into space until there was an opportunity to do so. And so perhaps it's seeing people that are doing things that you might aspire to do yourself, people that are a bit like you, possibly, that helps people to think about these careers. But also, I mean, taking part in projects, in things that you can actually, do with your hands, something that's like a project like the Mars Balloon Project that Thales Alenia Space has just launched. So the idea is that children can work together in groups. A great thing to do, of course, if you're a scientist, is to collaborate. So working in groups to to devise an experiment, to actually launch this experiment high up into the Earth's atmosphere, into conditions that will be very similar to some of those conditions on the Martian surface. And then that experiment is brought back to Earth, sent back to the children, back to the schools, the clubs, and the children can find out what happened to their experiment. So there's nothing like actually getting involved in something like that, doing something with your hands, working with your friends, and having a bit of fun creativity in the process.
Yeah, that's something that really does bring it to life beautifully, doesn't it? There are many young people, as we said, born out by this research, that would aspire to be an astronaut, but it does seem a little fantastical explaining that to other people. I mean, is it such a leap to become an astronaut? There aren't very many of you in the world, are there?
Well, it's true that there haven't been many so far. In fact, I think from the very beginning, since Yuri Gagarin flew in 1961. So from the very beginning, there's been 560. Is it 565, 568, something like that, but certainly well less than 600 people fly. But although we've been told, I think, for decades really, that we're on the cusp of commercial space flight and that's going to bring us tourism, I don't think we're all going to go into space. It's not going to be like popping down the road to visit your local park. But I think space flight really will become much more accessible, the environment of space for people to work in. So your employer, if you're a pharmaceutical company, you might want to send your staff into space to grow protein crystals so that you can develop better drugs, for instance. If you were working on home products, you might send somebody into space to look at fire retardant chemicals. Things that are really going to be useful for companies. I can see spaceflight becoming open for that. So yes, as a member of staff, instead of being told that your job's moving to the company down the road, you might actually be told one day you've got an opportunity to go and do some work on board a space station, or perhaps even go to the moon. I mean, wouldn't that be a thing? And actually, of course, for young children nowadays, it is really possible that people, in their working lifetimes, people will be on the surface of Mars. We think that the first person to walk on the surface of Mars has actually been born and is probably now at school. So yeah, it's really, really part of the future for our young people.
That is such an amazing thought. Sure, I've got goosebumps just thinking about that now. And now, for those that you've whetted their appetite already, but just explain to us briefly, I think we haven't got much time now, but what it's like being in space.
Oh, the most natural, relaxing feeling I can remember was that floaty, that feeling weightless. I forgot what it's like to sit down and to stand up. Of course, it's for me, for my body was adapting to feeling weightless, but also, of course, for my experiments. That's why we go into space, is to do things that you can't do on the Earth's surface. But those views out of the window, and the camaraderie of working with a small group of people in a confined environment. We all know what that's like after the pandemic, don't we? But that tolerance of flexibility and just working together as part of a crew, those kind of experiences I'll never ever forget.
Helen Sharman, you've sold it.